Alright, boys, I just wanted to chime in and show you something we just released for Android and iOS, and it's a VR game called Max VR. We were working the last few months on it, and my mission was to do the music and the sound effects. And of course, working for video games is a lot of fun. So I'm gonna show you the game. So that's what you're presented with once you enter the VR mode. Look at that sky. That's just awesome. And when you look at this with the glasses, it's crazy. It really is really cool to watch. So let's go ahead and start the level. The first level. You just have to kill things. And you can hear how the enemies, when they spawn, you know where they are coming from. I'm gonna let that one hit me. So that's the boss on the first level. You basically move your head and you point with this white dot, and now what I have to do is to hit those colors in the right order and kill the boss. I'm gonna miss on purpose. I can't miss actually because I already hit those, so just kill the boss. Then we enter into this that was like a transitional level into level 2. I can raise a barrier here if I want. Then we have the first enemy. Then I'm gonna just try to kill. Should I? Maybe I stop right now. You get the idea, right? So I'm just gonna stop that, and I hope you like what you saw. We had a lot of fun developing it, and just go and check it out. It looks awesome with some glasses. Some 3D glasses. So I'm just gonna go ahead and close this. As you can see, this is Unity. That's the engine that they used to develop the game, and I had access to the build, so I could just edit things myself and put them in the build and just try them right away. So I'm gonna show you now the project in FL Studio for first the music for the game. So we worked in this case. We did 4 layers where you have a general music that lasts for 3 minutes, so it's not boring. But there is a fade out, crossfade between tracks, and as you go to the boss, then the intensity of the music goes up, and as you go to the tunnel, then it goes a little bit more up to a kind of a climatic point in the game into the next level. So generally speaking, I started with this. Like a general level, which was as you get into the next level and start killing the next wave of enemies, then I had to proceed to compose 3 extra pieces, and the first one was more quiet, then back to the general, more intensity and more aggressive, and finally more trippy and more melodic. So let's listen to some of these, which is the general one. So you have basically small elements that are added so the track doesn't become monotonous. And they also don't stand out so much. It's like a general thing, and you shouldn't have like a, well, that was my intention, not to have like a leading melody that could be tiresome after a while. So I did things that sounded like melodies, but put them in the mix so they don't just pop out so much. So we're coming into the end. So you don't want any of those sounds to interfere too much or take a lead against the sound of the explosions of or the elements in the game. So that was our loop, and actually I'm not so sure if that was 3 minutes, but let's just see. 3:12, yeah, roughly 3 minutes. Well, let's go now to the first one. This is where you are presented with the cubes that say max, and then you get to start the game. I'm gonna go quickly over this one. No drums, more calm down, more atmospheric, still with a rhythm, because there is a first screen actually that is even more naked than this one, which is the one that is a 2D screen before getting into the VR engine, and it's where you find the credits and the help of the game. So in this case we have a version that is more chilled than this one, retaining most of the elements. I think if I deleted one, some was like just a couple of them only, but I kind of see that everything is in place there. Here, well, we saw that one. Now we go to the next, which is the boss level. This is when the boss shows up and you get to defeat him, right? So one semitone up to create a little bit more tension. The drums are more alive now in comparison. Now you have a hi-hat. It's actually kind of a glitchy loop. I think that loops comes from one of the libraries from ImageLine. Some of the loop masters, I can't actually tell you. This comes, if I go here in the browser, it tells me loop masters, Airwave, try loops. All right. So okay, you share the same elements from here. I just made the bass more aggressive. Before it was all filtered down, because there is a filter in the mixer where the bass is. This is my bass. Oops. And this is the filter. Let me not detach this. It's because I normally keep those in another window. So, alright. The filter, we have it here. And let's just minimize this so you can see the filter too. All right, and this is enabling or disabling that filter in the mixer itself here in the inspector. This one, I think, yeah, exactly. Now it's disabled and now it's enabled, and the filter is just letting a little bit of bass frequencies. It's passing a little bit of bass frequencies and nothing else. And well, now it's no filter here. So let's go to the third one. It's a little bit more climatic. It's a lot more melodic. Um, so that's it in terms of how it sounds. So let's go a little bit on how it was made. The request I was asked was that I had to do music in the retrowave, synthwave genre. That's what they told me. And I didn't know about exactly what kind of genre was. And it's like a new style, a modern 80s electronic music. Um, and I heard a lot of electronic music from the 80s, from Jean-Michel Jarre, with Oxygen and those kind of things. I also had a synthesizer back in the days called the Ensoniq ESQ1, and pretty much had the sounds that when I went in YouTube and looked for videos and references for synthwave music, that's exactly, or that's around the main things I found. Synthesizers like the Ensoniq synthesizers, and more kind of modern synthesizers from the 80s, and not so old school analog, right? The first digital synthesizers. I happen to have, or I did have, one of these ESQ ones, and I totally loved it. The interface of that synthesizer was exactly like this, except that it was much larger, like this. And it had this kind of display that looked so futuristic in those days, and at the same time retro already. It already looked retro, and it looked like the master control in Tron from the real world, when you have the guy talking like end of line and those kind of things, and it was really, really spooky and cool. I love this synthesizer a lot. I wish I knew more about synthesis when I had it, because I was pretty young, and I ended disassembling altogether because it didn't work anymore. The system ceased to work, and but I always had a good feeling for the synthesizer, and it was really complex and complete, I would say. Had a small sequencer, but it was something more like a sound synthesizer than a sequencer. The sequencer was more to create textures and things like that. Well, anyway, I was looking for instruments for synthwave, and it wasn't until I opened this one and I started to fiddle with the presets that I found that they fit the genre perfectly. So I use a lot of those here and there. Well, one of the main features in this genre, as far as the traditional or typical synthwave, is the drums being like this, right? It's like a rock slash disco beat, rather slow, not so much to dance and more to listen. And nowadays it's highly associated with cool animations, things that were kind of rescued from the whole aesthetics from the 80s movies, and things out of neon and a lot of pink and a lot of blue and pink, a lot of like sunglasses, and with shade of pink and blue and you see a palm tree in the sunglasses, like Miami Vice kind of thing. But in this case, of course, we're talking about a music that is more electronic and dance in nature, and more like a upgraded Jean-Michel Jarre song in terms of style, right? So, okay, let's just look at the synthesizers we have here, and let's just start with the sounds also. This is, I think, our kick, our main kick. And this comes from, I think, I can tell you, a Korg X5. And this is, I think, also from that, and it's a snare, but those are highly compressed, I think. Let me just check that snare again. So we have it here. And yeah, every time you see a transient processor there is because I'm somehow squashing that sound wave. So that's our snare with the transient processor, and this is without it. Pretty lifeless. Besides that, some EQ to bring those. I just had to fine tune these ones, the kick against the snare and the overall bass, like one entire hour until I found the right frequencies and the right places. So that was basically to bring from the snare. I wanted to bring some of the sparkle here and some of the, thumpiness that the snare has. But a little bit, not too exaggerated. And then, since I'm bringing so much of the sparkle here, I compensated a little bit down, so it's not too harshy. Let's see this one. It doesn't sound, I don't know why. I guess it's not assigned to anything. Or it is. It's a clap. Well, those claps are there somehow. Okay, no, I just disabled the channel because I didn't use the claps anymore. I guess I didn't need them. All right, moving along, we have, that is a small snare that is just there to support the other. You barely hear it. Same thing. And some others that I'm not even I'm not even sure I used in the project at the end. That I used my hi-hat with some phaser, because I like to, when you use a machine or a one sample hit hi-hat, you always want to put some modulation to bring some life into it and make it more dynamic over time. If it's too static, then it sounds like a machine gun. It may sound good the first few minutes, but after a while your brain doesn't want to listen to it anymore. And generally I put this very dry. I think I decided to put a little bit more here, but generally I put just a tiny bit so the hi-hat is not just static all the time. And the snare, same thing with the hi-hat. I hear some kind of reverb on it, but I think it's the sample itself. Yeah, I think it comes with it. So let's see. This I'm not even sure if I used. Let's see. put this bigger like that. Let's just go through the elements. This is our bass, main, deep, sub bass, and it's just the notes, not arpeggiator or anything, just the notes. Some automation on some parameters. I think it was the filter, I can tell you. The decay of the bass, just to, I wanted to vary how long the tail of the bass was, so it's not always the same. And I used guitar rig on this bass, just adding a cabinet to it. Let's see. So that's our bass. That's our bass. And let's just place the bass alone. Okay. There's my guitar rig. And let's see. Yeah, well, the automation is there. You can see it. All right. So I just bring the cabinet here and there in a random fashion. I think I do it just in sync, so it's not in the middle of an 8 note or something, but in random places. I didn't care so much about it. Actually, I recorded a long one, so I'm sure that I have enough variation and it's not just a boring pattern again, right? Okay, next. That bass goes through a lot of stuff. Also this bass chorus VST that I use a lot. It's an old thing, but it works super great to make a bass wider without having phasing problems. Some limiting, because this thing is a massive bass when the filter is open, right? Tame those peaks there, because they go crazy. Look, without it, well, you don't feel it so much, but believe me, it's there. Trends, oh well, that's one of the reasons maybe it's not so bad, is because this thing is crashing the bass once again, or yet again. What else? Okay, next thing. Just one pattern to add some kind of movement. What's that? It's how do you call this? Zeta 2, and I love this instrument. Totally. Written by an Argentinian, by the way. Really cool. Okay, so that's Zeta. Now next. Sounds pretty cool. It's an omnisphere patch. Number 3 is techno violins. Let me keep that somewhere here. All right. Next one. Let's go here. That's another Zeta. Another patch. I don't think I tweaked it too much. It just worked. This is a mix between Massive doing this this gross beat, of course, in the mixer. It's just one preset I can show you quickly. Well, where's that? 50. Gross beat, and this is the pattern. This is what it's using, and this is just empty, and a small gap here to cut. All right. Okay, next. Massive doing this. Let me see if there's something in the mixer. Yeah, another gross beat, just cutting there, gating the sound. Or gating the signal. Omnisphere number 7, which is blissful existence, and sounds like this. Whoops. That one is lovely, huh? Nah, Omnisphere. It's crazy. Alright, next one. I guess those are some automations that belong to that pattern. Let me see. Oh, nothing important. Next one. That is a massive again. Something distorted, not so important. That was just to create. That kind of NES feeling, you know, like a Mega Man game, something like that. This one is a big one too. That, of course, is what you call a pedal, which is all the time, and it's number 2 from Omnisphere. Let's see. It's called Tony Banks. Great name. All right. Okay, next pattern. Yeah, these are some trancey kind of thing I did at the beginning before I nailed the synthwave kind of thing. And I kept it. I like it. That one, pretty cool one, comes also from Image Line, and is that one, right? You just know. Some reverse crash, some. Those are pretty cool. I'm gonna tell you what's that. That is one of these Ensoniq emulators, and it sounds like this. I like how the sound goes out of tune a little bit. That's pretty cool. It sounds like a patch from Omnisphere, and it's just a digital synthesizer from the 80s and an analog emulator. And I'm not even sure if this thing has effects. I mean, not a good, decent reverb I don't think. I don't see any reverb here or effects. Do we have? Did we have in Sonic? I don't think so. Maybe basic things, but not anything big. All right, and it sounds as good, right? I love it. Pretty cool. So next one, another of those. Yeah, you know, from here to here, all of those. Another, and those are basically presets that were there. And if I moved something, was probably the decay of things to make them either long or to shorten out when you see like something that sounds good, but it's like a pad. So you want to make it like an instrument or something that you can play as staccato. And this one doesn't play. Okay. That goes here. Uh-huh. Next one of those. I'm not sure if I put a delay there. Oh yeah, there you go. Okay, let's see. Okay, so the difference between this and this is not as big. It's just the drums there. The main difference here in terms of sequence is this whole new part I did with all these instruments. I'm gonna just play the pattern for you without the strings first. Okay, first in context. And that's your strings. Actually, they were a little bit too loud. It's okay. Okay, so here is the pattern only. They're like great comping synthesizers. You can stack up many of them and somehow they sound cool. It's easy to add them and stack them up. That sounds super 80s. Super jar. And there's a little homage to Ja. I call it a quote. Merci, Monsieur Ja. Your music is awesome. Some of us grew up tripping with your music, loving it, and influenced us a lot. So as you can imagine, I had a lot of fun doing those little comping passages. And let's just play this all together a little bit, so just for the enjoyment of it. It's like super over the top, right? But for the game, it works perfect because you go through the tunnel and it's like you're traveling in a wormhole. Those two pan left and right sound really cool in the mix. All right, so to summarize all four, you have a chill one, you have a more dynamic one, then the aggressive one, and then the over the top one. Okay, so that's it for the music. Let's see what else I put here. Some harmors. That's it. Not too complicated. The key thing here was to put useful ideas, I guess. The mix is not overly complicated either. It's just the levels in a good way. At the end, I use always the limiter from Ozone 7 or 6 or 5, just because it's awesome. And it sounds like this with the limiter. I think I pushed the signal a little bit. Yeah, you can see it there. Let's just play. Let's put just that. And then let's just put it like this. So there you go. So I'm gonna switch over for the effects project to show you. Okay, so each of those have exactly the same length, and they are supposed to loop constantly, I think, in the game as the game runs, and there are crossfades between each of the phases according to where you are in the game. So let's just switch now to the effects. All right, so we are back with the effects project, and as you can see, it's already a mess. That looks cool. All right, let's just get rid of all the clutter. As you can see, I use many samples in this one. So I'm gonna just delete everything. I decided to show you all this. I just see how messy it was before. Okay, let me put my mixer here again and just minimize it. So these are all my effects. Part of them. There's another file with some of them. And here, this is when the boss spawns. Let's just put myself quieter and the audio louder. I hope I'm in the same level as before. I'm not so sure. Okay, so boss spawn. That was right. The boss shows up. Each of the characters that come at you, those minions, they have an assigned sound that is part of the surround environment on the VR engine, and also in, I think generally in games, you can just attach games to sounds to objects, and according to where they are, then they sound left or right. And in this case, we had to do some that we call proximity sounds and also direction sounds. And that means if you're in a 3D environment and you have to move your head to see where your enemy is, maybe at the first level it's okay, second level is okay, but by the time you're by the 5th or 6th, you have to be able to know where enemies are coming. It's like having a radar. You use your ears as a radar. We didn't want to put a radar in the middle of the screen. Instead, we wanted to use the sound as your point of reference. So they don't only spawn and you can see where they came from the right or the left or the center or up or somewhere in, I would say, 120 degrees. But they also come at you, so you have to know which one is closer and which one is far. And the way to be able to tell is by using a small sound in a loop that the enemy is always emitting, so you can hear it all the time. So each of those, the characters in the games are retro, Atari retro. I don't want to say the name of the game. And that's why I developed these sounds for those. So they look like this. And they come at you and they become louder and louder as they come at you. Same next one. Next. That one I like, and it works great in the game. That also works great. That I like too. That's a cool one. Sadly, we couldn't use like too many long waves with this. That's what I would like, but then the game starts to be bigger and bigger and bigger. And whatever you can loop without, that is not required to sound super great, then you do it this way. Now we have when this is part of the sounds when you kill an enemy. There is a swirl, like a wind swirl going over them. This is the explosion. I think it's gonna be pretty loud. And it's a mix between swirl and some particles. Here. Multiple explosions. Whoa, that is like a punch. That's another explosion. Some, retro Atari kind of sound. Chip. I used to use something called, how is it called? Chip bending. I have a library with that name. Circuit bend, right? Now that's the swirl, and that's like a windy stereo that I like to put there. Now there is another explosion that is basically similar, but this added more like highly stretched sound of an explosion, I think it is. Makes it a little bit longer. And another version. So I had like like 4 small variations of the same explosion. Didn't want to make them super different. This is another element that is the heart you get when you earn a life. This is not supposed to be there. It's from a library that I own, but I don't use it. And I'm not supposed to play them as they come in videos. And that is spawns. Those are when the different minions are spawning and coming towards you. That's another pretty brutal. That's another, but we play them quiet. So it's like it's like the enemy is coming from afar, and you hear like, "Arr!" You know, it just spawn into the scenery. So another. And these sounds that are not here now in the project is because I replaced them multiple times and I render at the end ones, and they are just vocoder or vocoded voices saying destroy, annihilate, stuff like that, obliterate. We thought that was fun to put there. And that is the player's damage. That's when you get hit. That is next level increase. Also levels. That is another level too. Similar thing with, I don't think we used that one. This one you hit the boss, mixed with this. You just hit the boss. And it hurts him, right? This is a transition towards the tunnel, I think. Or some other level increase. Pretty cool. Those are small elements. Those are explosions backwards. Those are bullets backwards. Yeah. And also slow down. That's supposed to sound like a ricocheting bullet. That sounds cool. And that is another whoosh kind of thing backwards. An Atari effect. Don't remember using that one. That's the barrier, and that's the whole barrier since you build it up. You build the barrier, and at the end you have the armor, right? You are protected. These are some small elements. Those are the scores that show up when you kill one enemy. And when you kill the enemy, we thought about putting some TV noise. And then at the end, like, the TV shoots off. And the number appears on top. That's the boss when you miss him, or when you miss the sequence of colors. And that's the missile that comes at you, the 3 or 4, I don't know how many missiles. That is like thunders backwards, I think, something like that. I'm not sure. It's not backwards, but it's thunders. And I think in the mixer I just killed the bass. Actually, the opposite. I put low air, which is from waves, and is awesome to add extra low end to things that you want to have more low end and they just don't have it on the frequencies. Also bass chorus to spread the stereo further and maybe blur the thing a little bit. And that comes from Sound Morph library. A lot of stuff are from Sound Morph, a lot of stuff from Image Line 2. But mostly when it comes to sound effects, I use Sound Morph stuff. I have their whole collection. And those are just awesome, these guys. Here we have. This is another level, I think, is the when you go out of the tunnel. And that's the same thing, rendered and played with the pitch. This is when you enter the tunnel, so it becomes pretty like, you know, you're going through a wormhole or something. This is one of the triangles passing by when you go through them. Same thing, longer. And that's another, maybe that's actually a reminder that I didn't use at all. So, well, that's pretty much it about the video game and how I developed all the effects and the audio for it. I hope you liked it and found it interesting and useful. I'm not gonna talk so much about mixing this. Well, mainly you can see equalizers, you know, no fancy stuff. Maybe there's a vocodex there, but that was for the vocoded phrases. There's another here. But in general, besides low air, that I use a lot on things, mainly when I do sound effects, really, really useful plug. Basically, it's just finding the right frequency, killing the wrong frequency, and trying to make the sound so they stand out, but they don't conflict too much with the music, because we have to remember that in Unity, well, I'm not sure if they can, but I think at least you don't have an advanced limiter there. So you have to be careful with your volumes and your mix if you're gonna mix things in game, right? So yeah, that's pretty much all. So if you have any questions, obviously you can just leave the comment. And if you like the video, of course, thumbs up. And what else? I'm planning in the future, or maybe tell me if you want or not. I wanted to maybe go through a general tutorial about my view on FL Studio after working so many years on it. I have like some specific template things, some linking things that I used to do. So for example, I never sidechain the whole volume or the whole spectrum from another against another wave. For example, if I'm sidechaining voice versus brass, I would like the voice to cut exactly where it is, and I compared with two equalizers. And I cut exactly what I need from the brass so the voice is not lost. And those are like cool tricks for mixing, and I can share some of that. So let me know, and just have fun working in FL Studio and doing music, which is such a wonderful thing we can do in the modern days, working with sequencers and all kind of plugins. This is the best thing ever. Peace.